Maybe it's just the pressure of the faith. Maybe it's the idea that I don't want to have another failure. I don't know, but I keep thinking.
Friends, it's me, Mirab, and I welcome you all to Starsville, USA. Today's chapter might just be the most emotional and shocking moment in Sister Wives history. The day Truth walked into the courtroom and tore apart every illusion the Browns had built for 12 long years. The courtroom is silent, the kind of silence that echoes louder than any sound. Mary Brown stands at the witness stand, her hands gripping each other so tightly that her knuckles turn white. She doesn't blink, not once, not even when Kody stares directly at her. He sits stiffly, trying to appear calm, but there's a flicker of fear beneath his eyes. Robyn sits a few feet behind him, pale and tense, her lips trembling as if whispering a prayer. Please don't let this happen. The judge adjusts his glasses. Mrs. Brown, he says, voice low but firm. You may proceed. Mary steps forward. The papers in her hand rustle like thunder in a storm. For 12 long years, she has carried a truth no one wanted to hear. A truth buried under faith, loyalty, and the picture-perfect smiles of a family once called blessed. She sets down an envelope on the table. The camera zooms in. Black ink across the front. Anna, DNA test results, confidential. Kody's hand twitches. Robyn looks away. This, Mary says, her voice steady but heavy, will prove everything. The gallery falls utterly still. This isn't just about betrayal anymore, this is about legacy. About a man who built his reputation on faith and family, and the woman brave enough to show how fragile that image really was. The judge glances at the document. Is this the evidence you wish to submit? Mary nods. Yes, Your Honor. It's time the truth came out. The clerk tears open the envelope. The sound of paper ripping cuts through the silence like a blade. Inside lies a single page, names, numbers, and one line that will change everything. The judge reads it. His eyes widen slightly before he looks toward Kody. Mr. Brown, he says slowly, would you like to respond before I read this aloud? Kody doesn't move. His jaw clenches tight. Robyn grips his sleeve. And then, after 12 years of silence, Mary finally speaks the words she's kept locked inside. The child you've been protecting all these years, she says clearly, isn't yours. The room gasps. The air cracks. Kody's face goes pale. Robyn's head drops. The judge lowers his glasses. For a moment, no one breathes. Mrs. Brown, the judge says quietly, we'll need context before this court can assess that evidence. Mary nods, her hands trembling faintly. Of course, Your Honor. She takes a slow breath, then begins. 12 years ago, everything looked perfect. Cameras, smiles, faith, a family that seemed unbreakable. But behind closed doors, cracks were already forming. Her voice slices through the stillness. Kody was charming, magnetic, a man who made everyone feel special, until you realized he only ever heard his own voice. She pauses. Then Robyn joined us, and everything shifted overnight. The trust between us started fading. And soon after, I heard a rumor. I ignored it because I wanted to believe in him, in us. But that rumor turned into a pattern. Calls that didn't make sense. Trips he couldn't explain. And then one day, I received a message meant for someone else. Gasps rise from the gallery. I confronted him, she continues, but he said I was paranoid. Said I was destroying the family. Still, I kept that message. And when the timelines stopped matching, I searched for the truth myself. The judge leans forward. And that led to the DNA test? Yes, Mary says quietly. But not immediately. It took years. Years of pretending, of watching my story rewritten without my permission. Her voice shakes but remains steady. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because a lie that lasts 12 years doesn't just destroy a marriage, it destroys people. The judge nods slowly. Kody stares ahead, blank and broken. His lawyer whispers something, but Kody doesn't respond. Mary returns to her seat, whispering under her breath, the truth always finds daylight, even if it takes 12 years. The judge clears his throat. We'll continue with the evidence timeline. But before the clerk can proceed, Robyn suddenly stands. Wait, she cries. The room bursts into whispers. The judge raises his hand. Order. Robyn's voice trembles, not with fear, but with guilt. There's something you don't know, she says. Something I should have said long ago. Everyone turns toward her. Cameras click. Reporters lean forward. When Solomon was born, Robyn says, I knew something wasn't right. I didn't have proof, but I felt it. I stayed quiet because I thought I was protecting my family. But really, I was only protecting myself. Her voice breaks. I was scared of Kody, of losing everything, of losing him. The courtroom falls silent again. Mary's lawyer stands. Your Honor, this is exactly why DNA evidence matters, because silence can never compete with truth. Robyn nods weakly. Her secret is no longer hers to keep. Kody's face turns rigid. The illusion of control slips away. Mary stands again, calm and strong. This isn't revenge, she repeats softly. It's about truth, about responsibility, and about giving a child the right to know who he truly is. The judge nods. Proceed. The clerk opens the final envelope, carefully unfolding the single sheet that carries 12 years of deception. Cameras zoom closer. The judge reads aloud. Results show 99.9% certainty. Solomon is not Mr. Kody Brown's biological son. The words hang in the air like thunder. Robyn gasps, covering her face. Kody slumps forward, his composure gone. Reporters rush to capture every second. Mary exhales slowly, eyes unblinking. This, she says quietly, is the truth. 12 years in the making. Chaos breaks loose. Whispers, cameras, disbelief. The judge's gavel strikes. Order in the court! But even his voice can't contain the storm that's erupted. Robyn turns to Kody, her voice shaking. I never wanted this, she whispers. Mary says nothing. The silence says everything. Outside, cameras flash. Reporters scream questions. But inside, within those four walls, the truth has finally won. After 12 years of deception, the truth has spoken. And it cannot ever be buried again. Truth has spoken. And it cannot ever be buried again. The courtroom hung heavy with tension. Every breath measured, every eye fixed on the woman standing tall at the center of the storm. Mary stood, her voice steady yet layered with quiet conviction. This isn't about revenge, she said, her tone slicing through the charged silence. This is about truth, for Solomon, for justice, and for everyone who has been living under a lie for far too long. The judge's gavel came down sharply, demanding order. This court will now proceed to witness testimony regarding the concealment of evidence and the falsification of records, he declared. You are reminded that this is a court of law, not a stage. Robyn's shoulders collapsed inward. Her hands shook as she gripped a handful of tissues, mascara streaking down her cheeks in faint gray lines. Beside her, Kody sat rigid, pale, and motionless, a statue of denial. Mary exhaled, firm yet composed. One truth had been revealed, and there was no going back. The DNA did not lie. It never did. The walls of deception built over 12 long years were beginning to crumble, and the entire courtroom could sense it. The storm had only just begun. The air was thick with anticipation as the judge turned towards Robyn. Mrs. Brown, he said firmly, the court requests that you provide a statement regarding your knowledge of Solomon's paternity and your actions during the early years of his life. Robyn gasped audibly, her attorney clutching her elbow, whispering a desperate caution. But the warning came too late. Her voice, trembling yet clear, broke through the silence. I knew, she whispered. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward with pens flying across notepads. I knew from the very beginning, she continued, her voice cracking. I didn't tell Kody. I thought I was protecting him, protecting our family. I believed it was best for Solomon, for all of us. Mary's eyes held no triumph, only a deep, steady sadness. The truth had begun to speak for itself. Mrs. Brown, the judge interrupted sternly, you are under oath. Did you knowingly withhold the truth about Solomon's paternity from Mr. Brown? Robyn's fingers clenched around the tissue in her hand. She swallowed hard. Yes, she said, barely above a whisper. I was afraid. I didn't know what would happen if I told him. I believed I was doing the right thing. A ripple of shock moved through the courtroom. Even Kody, once stoic, faltered, his jaw tightening, his eyes hollow. Mary's attorney rose slowly, voice cutting but controlled. Mrs. Brown, were you the only one involved in concealing this truth? Or did others assist you in altering records or constructing false timelines? Robyn's eyes flickered uncertainly before landing on Janelle, seated quietly in the second row. Her lips trembled. Yes, she said softly. Janelle knew. From the beginning. The gallery exploded into whispers. Christine's hand flew to her mouth. Kody turned sharply towards Janelle, his face contorted with disbelief. Even the judge leaned back, startled by the admission. Mary remained motionless, her composure unbroken. She didn't need to speak. The confessions were doing all the work. The gavel struck again. "Order!" the judge demanded. "The court will now hear from the next witness. Mrs. Janelle Brown, please take the stand." Janelle rose slowly. Her long beige sweater hung loosely from her frame, and her steps echoed softly across the marble floor. She looked calm, but her eyes betrayed the years of quiet torment she had endured. "Do you understand that you are under oath?" the judge asked. "I do," Janelle replied, her voice steady but heavy. "Mrs. Brown," Mary's attorney began, "did you know that Solomon's paternity was not as it was portrayed?" A long silence followed. Janelle's lips quivered before she finally spoke. "Yes," gasps filled the courtroom. Kody's fists tightened. Robyn buried her face in her hands. "And did you play a role in keeping that truth hidden?" The attorney pressed. Janelle nodded slowly. "Yes, I was frightened of what would happen to the family, of what this truth might destroy. I convinced myself that silence was the safest choice." Reporters scribbled furiously. The tension was almost tangible, pressing down on everyone like a physical weight. "Did anyone help you maintain that silence?" the lawyer continued. Janelle's gaze flickered briefly toward Robyn. "No one forced me," she admitted. "But I did advise Robyn, told her how to manage things delicately. I thought I was protecting the child, not hiding a crime." Kody's face twisted in disbelief, his composure breaking for the first time. "Do you regret it?" the attorney asked. "Yes," Janelle said softly. "Every day. My silence did more harm than I could ever have imagined." The courtroom fell quiet. Even the air seemed to hesitate, holding its breath. The judge nodded gravely. "We will now proceed with the next witness." Christine rose from her seat, her calm presence commanding attention. She walked towards the stand, her footsteps deliberate, her expression resolute. "Do you swear to tell the truth?" the judge asked. "I do," she replied, her voice unwavering. "Mrs. Brown," the attorney began, "you were not directly involved, but you were a close observer of these events. What did you see?" Christine's gaze swept across the courtroom. "I saw the truth being buried, slowly and carefully," she said. Mary was dismissed, isolated. Every time she asked questions, she was met with lies. There were whispers, hidden emails, forged timelines. Everything was orchestrated to protect the illusion that Solomon was Kody's son. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Christine's tone hardened. Documents were changed. Dates didn't match. There were fake hospital visits, false records. It was all designed to sustain the lie. "I wasn't part of it, but I saw it all." Mary lowered her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. Not from pain, but from the quiet confirmation that the truth she'd carried alone for years was finally out in the open. The judge nodded solemnly. "The testimonies will be entered into record. We will now review the submitted documents, hospital files, email exchanges, and name change requests relevant to this case." Mary's attorney stepped forward with a thick folder. "Your Honor, these documents verify the manipulation of records and communication between Mrs. Robyn Brown and Mrs. Janelle Brown regarding Solomon's paternity." The clerk began sorting the papers, and the courtroom buzzed with murmurs as the first pages were displayed. Hospital records revealed discrepancies in dates and visitation logs. Emails detailed secret discussions between Robyn and Janelle about keeping the truth hidden. Legal paperwork for name changes bore forged dates and altered details. Every revelation tightened the noose around the decades-old lie. Kody sat frozen, hands trembling slightly as his world shattered before the world's eyes. Robyn wept silently, mascara streaked and pale. Janelle's face was drained of color, but her eyes showed something close to relief. Mary didn't move. She simply watched, calm, steady, unflinching. 12 years of silence had finally met their reckoning. The courtroom had become a place of truth, and the story was only just beginning. The courtroom's air grew dense, almost suffocating, as the last of the documents were laid bare. Each paper fluttered like a confession, every stamped signature and mismatched date echoing louder than any spoken word. The judge leaned forward, scanning the evidence with measured precision, his brow tightening as he reached the final page. The weight of 12 years of deceit pressed down on the room like an invisible hand. Mary remained still, composed, collected, but her pulse beat like a war drum beneath the surface. She had waited years for this day, for truth to finally stand unmasked before justice. Every lie, every manipulation, every sleepless night had led to this moment. The judge cleared his throat, his tone firm but solemn. This court recognizes that substantial evidence has been presented, suggesting a long-term concealment of the child's true parentage, falsification of records, and deliberate obstruction of the truth. He paused, his gaze moving slowly across the room, from Robyn, broken and tear-streaked, to Janelle, pale and shaking, and finally to Kody, whose face had turned to stone. Kody's knuckles whitened as his fingers dug into the edge of the table. His eyes darted between Robyn and Janelle, disbelief and rage warring within him. "You both knew?" he muttered under his breath, voice hoarse with shock. "All this time? You both knew?" Robyn tried to reach for his hand, but he recoiled sharply, his chair screeching back across the marble floor. The sound echoed through the courtroom, a jagged tear in the silence. The judge rapped the gavel once, warningly. "Mr. Brown, control yourself. The court understands your distress, but this remains a place of order." Kody swallowed hard, his jaw tight. "Order?" he hissed under his breath. "My whole life's been a lie. My family, my son, my marriage, all a performance for the world to see." Robyn burst into tears, clutching the edge of the witness table. "I did it for you, Kody," she cried. "For the family. You wouldn't have stayed if you'd known. You would have left and everything would have fallen apart. I was trying to protect us." "Protect us?" Kody barked bitterly. "You destroyed us." His voice cracked mid-sentence, the rage breaking into something rawer. Disbelief, humiliation, grief. "You let me raise another man's son under my name, under my roof, while you sat beside me every day pretending nothing was wrong." The courtroom murmured, whispers swelling like a tide. Cameras clicked, capturing every tremor, every tear. Mary's attorney stood again, measured and calm. "Your Honor," he said evenly, "we would now request permission to introduce the paternity report, the final, certified DNA result confirming that Solomon Brown is not biologically fathered by Mr. Kody Brown." The judge nodded, signaling to the bailiff. The envelope was passed forward, handled with ceremonial gravity. The rustle of paper filled the silence as the clerk unfolded the document. The judge read the words carefully, his voice level yet cutting through the tension. DNA test result. The probability of paternity for Mr. Kody Brown is calculated at 0%. Gasps swept through the courtroom like a gust of wind. A woman in the gallery clutched her chest. A reporter dropped his pen. The sound of Robyn's soft sobs filled the air, echoing against the courtroom's marble walls. Kody closed his eyes, his body trembling. He sat back heavily, as though the weight of 12 years had just fallen onto his shoulders all at once. Mary looked down at her hands, exhaling quietly. There was no victory in her expression, only the quiet ache of vindication. She had never wanted this spectacle, only the truth. The judge placed the report aside with a soft thud. "The court acknowledges the authenticity of this document," he said gravely. "It will be entered into evidence as Exhibit 47B." Janelle covered her face, silent tears slipping through her fingers. Christine, seated near the gallery rail, watched solemnly, her eyes heavy with sorrow but also release. For a moment, no one moved. The silence was total, suffocating. Then the judge spoke again. "In light of this revelation, this court will convene a special session tomorrow to determine the appropriate legal proceedings regarding potential fraud, falsification of documents, and emotional distress inflicted through deception. Until then, the court is adjourned." The gavel struck once, a sound that seemed to reverberate endlessly. But even as people began to stir, reporters packing cameras, attorneys gathering files, security officers stepping forward, Mary remained seated. Her gaze stayed fixed on the table before her. Around her, the chaos of the courtroom spun, but inside her, a strange calm had settled. The storm had broken, but its aftermath was only beginning. As Robyn was escorted out, shoulders shaking, she turned once, her eyes meeting Mary's across the courtroom. For a fleeting second, there was no hatred, no defense, only regret. A silent plea for forgiveness that Mary could not yet grant. Kody lingered behind, motionless. He looked hollow, emptied of everything he once was. Janelle avoided his eyes, her face streaked with tears, knowing the reckoning had only just begun. Christine walked past Mary as the courtroom emptied, pausing for a brief moment. "You were right," she said softly. "You always were." Mary gave a faint nod. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. The truth always finds its way out, no matter how deeply it's buried. Outside the courthouse, the media storm was already raging. Cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward, reporters shouting questions. But Mary didn't hear them. She walked past the chaos with her head held high, her face illuminated by the fading light of the afternoon sun. For 12 years, lies had ruled their world. But now the truth had finally spoken, and its voice was louder than all the deception that came before it. The day wasn't an end. It was only the beginning of what justice was meant to look like. Robyn's hands trembled as the weight of 12 years pressed down upon her. Around the courtroom, reporters scribbled frantically, the scratching of their pens the only sound that filled the heavy silence. Mary's attorney spoke with calm precision, his voice cutting through the air like a scalpel. These records, together with the DNA test and the depositions presented, he said, reveal a sustained pattern of concealment, deceit, and manipulation lasting more than 12 years. This is not a misunderstanding nor a family disagreement. This is a deliberate attempt to distort facts fundamental to the identity of a child. The judge turned the pages slowly, his brow furrowed. When he finally looked up, his gaze was sharp and solemn. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown," he said, "these records substantiate the claims made before this court. You will each have a chance to respond, but the gravity of this evidence cannot be overlooked." Robyn's composure cracked. I didn't know what else to do," she murmured. "I thought I was protecting everyone." Kody leaned back, pale and silent, the paper trail before him confirming the suspicions he had long buried. Mary leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but resonant. "This isn't about shame," she said softly. "It's about truth. Solomon deserves to know who he is. The law deserves to know the facts. Justice cannot be served while lies still stand." The judge nodded slowly and struck the gavel. "The court will recess briefly. When we return, we will consider the implications of this evidence and the legal consequences of the deception it reveals." When the court resumed, the air was denser, charged with anticipation. 12 years of secrets now lay in the open, exposed by DNA, documents, and confessions. The room felt like a bowstring drawn to breaking point. "The court will now address the parties directly," the judge declared. "You will each have the opportunity to respond to the evidence and testimony presented." Kody shifted uneasily. For years, he had controlled the narrative, the family, the image. But now his empire of silence was crumbling. Robyn sat beside him, clutching a tissue. Janelle stared down at the floor, her posture heavy with the guilt of quiet complicity. Mary, poised and unshaken, met Kody's eyes for a brief moment, not with anger or triumph, but with quiet resolve. Mary's lawyer stood. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, the evidence is clear. The paternity of Solomon was deliberately concealed. Official documents were altered. Others participated in maintaining this falsehood. How do you respond?" Robyn inhaled sharply. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I was frightened of what Kody would do, of what would happen to us. I thought I was protecting the family, protecting Solomon. I didn't know any other way." Kody's expression faltered. For the first time in years, the mask slipped. I didn't know," he stammered, the words hollow, half-believed. He fell silent, staring at the documents that told the story he'd tried to bury. The lawyer turned to Janelle. "And you, Mrs. Brown. You helped maintain this secret. Speak your truth." Janelle looked up, her eyes meeting Mary's. "I was afraid," she whispered. "I wanted to keep the peace. I thought staying silent would protect everyone. But my silence hurt people I loved. I regret it deeply." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Reporters leaned forward, pens racing. Even Kody was still, undone by the quiet honesty of their confessions. Mary spoke again, voice steady but filled with emotion. "This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. Solomon deserves to know who he is, and the law deserves accountability. You had 12 years to make this right. You chose fear instead." The judge's gavel struck firmly. The court recognizes the seriousness of these admissions and the supporting evidence. Consequences will follow in accordance with the law. Robyn wept openly. Kody sat motionless, staring into the space between guilt and disbelief. Janelle exhaled, tears slipping down her cheeks, the release of a decade-long burden. Mary remained composed, watching quietly as 12 years of deception unraveled before them. Then the door opened. All eyes turned as Solomon entered, tall, nervous, holding a worn notebook. The courtroom stilled. Even the reporters paused. "Solomon," the judge said gently, "you may read your statement." The boy took a deep breath, his voice fragile at first. "My name is Solomon. I grew up believing Kody was my father. But this year I found out that might not be true. I don't know who my real father is. I don't know why people lied to me." The room froze. Kody's fists clenched. Robyn bowed her head. Janelle couldn't meet his eyes. Mary leaned forward slightly, eyes soft but firm, encouraging him to go on. "I just want to know who I am," Solomon continued, voice breaking. "I want to know my story, not the one someone else created for me. I'm not angry. I just want honesty." Silence enveloped the courtroom. Even the judge looked moved. "This court recognizes the emotional and psychological toll such deception has caused," he said gravely. "We will take every step to protect this young man's right to the truth." Kody sat frozen, visibly shaken. Robyn wiped her face, trembling. Janelle wept silently. Mary's eyes glistened, not from victory, but from empathy. This was not just a case of fraud. It was a reckoning for every stolen year. Finally, the judge adjusted his glasses, spreading the papers before him. After reviewing all evidence, testimonies, and legal considerations, he began, "This court is prepared to deliver its verdict." Mary folded her hands tightly. Robyn's tears flowed freely. Janelle sat upright, her heart caught between guilt and relief. "On the matter of civil paternity fraud," the judge announced, "the court finds in Mrs. Brown's favor. The evidence, including DNA tests, documents, and sworn statements, establishes a deliberate pattern of falsification spanning 12 years. Damages for emotional distress and reputational harm are awarded in the sum of $265,000. Mary inhaled deeply, not triumphant, but at peace. Her gaze turned toward Solomon, who clutched a small stuffed bear, his innocence now reclaimed. The judge continued, "As for the forgery of official documents and the concealment of identity, this case will be referred to the district attorney for criminal review. Further charges may be considered." Robyn wept into her hands. Kody's face remained blank, the look of a man confronting the ruins of his own design. Janelle's tears were quiet, cleansing. Reporters typed feverishly as whispers rippled through the gallery. Mary rose and addressed the court one final time. "This was never about money," she said softly. "It was about truth, for Solomon, for justice, for everyone who's lived under the shadow of deceit." The gavel fell. "Court is adjourned," the judge declared. A long breath passed through the room. A decade's worth of silence finally exhaled. As Mary walked out with Christine and Janelle, the flash of cameras erupted, voices calling her name. But she didn't speak. Today wasn't about headlines. It was about closure. For the first time in more than a decade, truth had triumphed over lies. Solomon now had the chance to reclaim his story, and the women who once lived under deception walked together toward healing. That night, in a quiet hotel room, Mary opened a letter. It was from Solomon. His words were simple but powerful. "I hope one day we can talk again. Not as the child you protected, but as someone who finally understands." Mary folded the letter carefully, tears of release sliding down her cheeks. The burden of 12 years had lifted. Justice had been done, not just in the law, but in the restoration of truth, identity, and peace. Somewhere else, Kody sat alone, the reality of his downfall playing on the news. No one called. No one comforted him. The man who once dictated every story now faced silence, the same silence he'd forced upon others. And for the first time in years, the night felt still. Not because of fear, but because at last the truth had spoken. And the truth had won. The truth had spoken. And the truth had won.